Give a warm Oklahoma welcome to the father of Senator Ted Cruz and the director of Purifying Fire International Ministries, Mr. Rafael Cruz.
Thank you. It is so great to be among so many patriots. What a blessing to be in the reddest state in the Union. You Oklahomans rock. Well, I'll tell you, it is a blessing to live in America. I didn't always live here. I grew up in Cuba under a very oppressive military dictatorship. And of course, the revolution started in the high schools and the universities. And I found myself involved in a revolution as a teenager. As a result of that, I was captured, was imprisoned, was tortured. But in spite of the fact that I thought I would be killed, God had other plans for me. And even though I didn't know him, he knew me. And so I was released, and then I had to leave the country. And so I wrote to 3 universities in the United States. The first one to accept me was the University of Texas. And so with that acceptance letter, I was able to get a 4-year student visa and come to the United States legally as a student. Went to the University of Texas, got a job full-time as a dishwasher, worked full-time, went to school full-time. I remember when I was in Cuba, there was this young, charismatic leader in the revolution talking about hope and change. His name was Fidel Castro. And you know, we all followed him. We thought he was going to be our liberator. Little did we know. Well, anyway, I went to the University of Texas. Then when he took over in '59, I went back at the end of the semester, at the end of May. And boy, did I get a shock. This same man that had been talking about hope and change was now talking about how the rich were evil, about how they oppressed the poor, and about the need to redistribute the wealth. They began confiscating private property, attacking freedom of the press, attacking freedom of religion. I just left totally disappointed, never to go back to Cuba, but so glad to be in the land of the free and the home of the brave. I am so proud to be an American. This is the greatest country on the face of the earth. And you know, I remember in the late 70s, when I saw a government in this country beginning to institute policies that reminded me of that bearded dictator. You remember the Carter years? Double-digit unemployment, double-digit inflation, lines around the block to get gasoline, 22% interest rates. A government so weak in foreign policy that Iran became so emboldened that it captured 82 Americans and held them hostage for 444 days. It was not coincidental that they got released the day President Reagan was inaugurated. So, I remember I used to tell Ted, my son Ted, you know, Ted, when I lost my freedom in Cuba, I had a place to come to. If we lose our freedoms here, where are we going to go? And you know, that's a very sobering question that we have to ask ourselves today. Because we are on the verge of losing our freedoms. Our freedoms are being eroded more and more every day. If we have 4 or 8 more years of these failed socialist, Marxist policies, this country is going to be gone. And I'll tell you something, I lost my freedom once. I'm not willing to lose it again. I'll die fighting before I lose it again. And so should you. So anyway, as a result of what I saw in the Carter years, I became very involved in the Reagan campaign. I remember that our conversation around the dinner table was all about why we had to get rid of this leftist, progressive Jimmy Carter and replace him with a constitutional conservative like Ronald Reagan. I'll tell you, every day that was our conversation around the dinner table. So my son, when he was 9 years old, he got a dose of conservative politics from a Christian worldview every day for a year. And then we got him introduced to an organization called the Free Enterprise Institute. He was just entering high school. He's reading Adam Smith, John Locke, von Mises, Hayek, Bastiat, the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers, Milton Friedman. And then they form a group of 5 kids. Call them the Constitutional Corroborators. They taught these 5 kids, of whom Ted was one of them, to memorize the U.S. Constitution. And for the next 4 years, they traveled the state of Texas. They would go into a luncheon meeting at a Rotary Club, set 5 easels at the front of the room. While people were having lunch, these 5 kids would write the Constitution by memory and then give a half-hour patriotic speech on free market economics and the Constitution. They did approximately 80 speeches on free market economics and the Constitution during the next 4 years, all through high school. Before my son left high school, he was passionate about the Constitution. He was passionate about the Declaration, about free markets, about limited government, about the rule of law. And that passion became like fire in his bones. And let me tell you, the reason I know that my son Ted Cruz will not compromise his principles in Washington is that fire is as alive today as it was 30 years ago. America needs a fighter. America needs a man of principle. America needs a man that will tell the truth and will do what he says he's going to do. That's who Ted Cruz is. Whether it is fighting illegal unconstitutional amnesty, or fighting for life, or fighting for traditional marriage, or fighting to stop out of control spending and out of control regulation and out of control taxes that are destroying our economy. What he wants to do is unleash the private sector, unleash the entrepreneurship of America, and allow Americans to do what they do best. And that is when government gets out of the way. Like Reagan said it so well, government is not the solution, government is the problem. So Ted Cruz wants to go to Washington to cut down the size and scope of the federal government, to be able to reduce taxes to just a simple flat tax and abolish the IRS. To be able to eliminate the myriads of regulations that are stifling businesses. To be a small business owner in America today is very difficult because of the thousands upon thousands of regulations. We need to make sure those regulations are repealed. One of the things that my son Ted Cruz has promised to do day one is to revoke all these unconstitutional executive orders that Obama has put in place. Beginning with Obamacare. I'll tell you, America is the greatest country on the face of the earth. America is a country that with hard work and perseverance, all your dreams can become a reality. I know it from my own life. When I came to this country, I had nothing, couldn't even speak the language. And I remember when my son was being sworn in as U.S. Senator. I couldn't contain the tears from my eyes as I was sitting in the Senate chamber, seeing him being sworn in. And I just thought back over 50 years before, when I came to this country with nothing. And to now see my son as a U.S. Senator and potentially being the next President of the United States of America, the only thing that came to my mind was this: only in America. Only in America. Don't let our president or anybody else tell you that this is not an exceptional country. This is the most exceptional country on the face of the earth. And let me tell you, America is worth saving. America is worth saving because this is the country that has exported freedom across the world, that has exported the saving grace of Jesus Christ across the world. And I tell you, America needs a president that will stand for truth. It is not coincidental that his book that's coming out in a month is called A Time for Truth, Reigniting the Promise of America. That promise that anyone can achieve their wildest dreams. That promise that we can give our children and our grandchildren a better life that we have lived. That promise that makes America that shining city on a hill to the glory of God. I'll tell you one thing. One thing you can count on Ted Cruz. He will tell you the truth and he will do what he says he's going to do. He will defend the Constitution and the rule of law. He will bring us back to what made America great. And I'll tell you what, he will fight relentlessly to see religious freedom back in America, to see the Constitution honored, to see that families have the opportunity to raise their children in an environment that is safe, and it makes America great, and it starts with the families. This is why he's fighting so hard for the traditional family, for giving families the opportunity to make their dreams a reality. I encourage you, let's stand together, and together we the people can elect a constitutional conservative like Ted Cruz to give us the greatest days of America yet. I want to ask you to please text to 33733 the word Constitution and become part of this grassroots army. And come join Ted Cruz to take America back to the glory of God. Thank you. God bless you. God bless America. Thank you.